Hi, I am Jennifer Ansel, and I am through a K-State. I am a Master of Food Volunteer, and I graduated in 2025. I am going to show you today one of the things that you can be doing with excess of fruit, or fruit that is on its way out. Some people make jams. One thing you can also do is you can make fruit leather, and that requires a dehydrator. You can see that there's several different types of dehydrator. We've got a unipurpose dehydrator, like something like this, that you can end up using with several trays in the middle. You can also use an oven on a low setting. A lot of your toaster ovens now may even have a dehydrating setting, as well as air fryer, etc. So there are lots of different options for you. But the key is to be able to use up your produce. And so oftentimes we will use produce that is kind of towards the end of its life that actually is beneficial for you when you're talking about a fruit leather, because it's going to end up being a little bit softer, and it will end up actually getting a better texture that way. However, some of the fruit that I'm using today isn't quite as ripe as you might like, so what I will also show you to do is that you might want to cook it down a little bit. So here I have some strawberries that I have cleaned up and then also cut into pieces. So I'm going to add those here. And I didn't know if I was going to have enough. I may. Or you could also add, I've got some black raspberries here. I'm going to show you or blackberries here. I'll show you what that also does. There's no rule that says that you have to have only one thing. Maybe you have several pieces of fruit that you need to use in your kitchen. So feel free to mix and match. A couple things I will say about the fruit selections that you that you use. There are some fruits that are going to obviously have a little bit more sugar and sweetness in them. That would include your blackberries and your strawberries, as long as they're ripe. However, there are some fruits that you're going to end up finding are not necessarily ideal for fruit leathers. Melons and pineapple can sometimes be very difficult because they have such a high water content. So those are a bit of a struggle. You might want to find a new path for those. Also, one of the things that you'll find out is that some fruits will not have the texture that you want to have because they're low in something called pectin. And pectin actually provides a little bit better texture for your fruit. First off, what I'll do to add pectin is add something like apples. That will actually allow for the fruit to bind together a little bit better. Same thing with you'll use it and see it used in jams as well. So that will allow for your leather to stick together as opposed to being brittle, and it'll actually make it more like a sheet as opposed to, I guess, I'll show you some examples of what it shouldn't look like here in a minute. I think I might have enough here for the purposes that I want to use. So as I mentioned, I'm going to go ahead and cook this down. When it comes to sweetening, there are a couple different options there. Some people decide they don't want to add any sugar, which is the camp that I generally end up in, unless of course it's a tartar fruit. So something like a raspberry, currant, something like that, you may want to add a little bit of sweetener. You do not have to add sugar. You could add something like dates or another fruit that has a lot of sweet in it, maybe a fig, and then that way not only are you adding a little bit more pectin, but you're adding the sweetener without actually adding sugar to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cook this down just a little bit, and then once we do that, actually warming it can make it such that your fruit leather will dry a little bit faster, having that warm on the beginning end of it. It'll also aid in the process of cooking it down. You could go one way or the other depending on your fruit. If you were doing something wet like blackberries, you could probably go ahead and blend this and cook it down a little bit first. With a firmer fruit, I'm going to recommend cooking that first and then blending it. You can also do something, a juicier fruit like this. You probably don't need to cook it down. So with this one, I've already rinsed these, and these can go into your blender right away. Now, one thing with a fruit like blackberries or raspberries is that it will have seeds in it, and so for some people that's a feature. And for some people, that's a flaw. And so if you are in the feature category, then you can blend it up and you can go ahead and use it as for your fruit leather. If you decide it's a flaw, then we've got a fix for that as well. So we'll go ahead and blend this up. So we will go ahead and blend this bad boy up.
You don't have to have it facing the camera.
Yes. All right. So we're going to go ahead and blend these up. All right, so when it comes to blending your fruits that contain seeds, you probably just want to do the basic blend, especially if you want to get the seeds out of them. Depending on your blender, you may end up actually getting a seed puree, which is probably not what you want to do either. Our goal here is to actually get and extract the seeds out. So what I have in this situation is I actually have just a sieve. There are more detailed or specific instruments that a person can use for this, but we're trying to use something that's in your kitchen. So this guy here will pour that in, and then use a spatula to kind of push the rest of your fruit through, leaving the seeds behind. Seeds can be a feature or a flaw, so do whichever you prefer. Now that I've gone ahead and gotten most of the seeds of this out, then I can go ahead and show you what the puree looks like here. And now we're ready to go ahead and put it into our dehydrator. A lot of dehydrators will come with trays already. And so I'm gonna bring one of my dehydrators over and show you what that looks like. This dehydrator here actually is stackable as well, but it also has trays specifically for fruit leather that you can use. So you'll need to make sure that when you do pour your puree in, that you don't want it too thick and you don't want it too thin. Smooth is, or level is best. And so you're really looking for something about a third of, or an eighth of an inch to a quarter of an inch. Now for me here, I may or may not have quite enough, which is okay. Again, if you'll get to a point where you'll understand about how much it is that you need. But again, a layer that is about even is really preferred, because what will happen when it starts to dry is that you will definitely have it dry on the edges before it starts drying on the center. And if you get too much of a glut in the center, then you're going to end up definitely having an issue with it, spreading and becoming too thin or thick. So again, our goal is to spread this out so that it's in an even layer, about a quarter of an inch to an eighth inch to a quarter inch thick. And try not to have too much of it gloop up in the center. Let it get to the edges. That's where it's going to dry the fastest. And then you're set to go. Now something like this, we can dry it, and you'll want to keep an eye on it. I'll turn my dehydrator on to about 150 degrees, and then I will let it dehydrate for approximately 6 to 8 hours. At about 6 hours, that's when I'll come in and I'll check to see where it's at. You don't want it to feel tacky at all. You want it to feel dry. Your finger moves away quickly. If you are feeling it, that it's starting to pull away from the edge easy, that's a good sign. However, if you're trying to peel it up and it's part of it starting to stick, that's a sign that it is not quite done yet, so you should let it dry for a little bit longer. It is possible to over dehydrate, which a lot of times, especially in the humidity of summer, can actually be fixed. You can allow that to set out a little bit, and sometimes the humidity in the air will actually bring that moisture back to it. Even if you cannot get it to be as wet as you might like it to, it is still possible for you to use that. A lot of people will actually break the brittle parts down into powders. They'll go ahead and blend it up, or they will use a mortar and pestle. They'll blend it up, and then they can use those powders in smoothies. Now, this is what we would see when we are talking about a fruit that goes directly without heating. We did heat up our strawberries, and so we'll go ahead and blend those, and we'll do the same process here. Now, strawberries could potentially be seeded, but I think that you'll find that that's not a necessary step for most of the time. We've added our strawberries to our blender, and then we'll go ahead and blend this up as well. Now, I do have a little bit of liquid in here. One option is to drain off that liquid, because that liquid is going to ultimately be something that you're going to dehydrate out. The unfortunate aspect of that, and one of the reasons and benefits of doing your own fruit leather, is that it may also take some of the nutrients that you're trying to preserve out as well. So Try not to add any water, but also anything that you drain off, you may lose nutrient. All right, go ahead and see if we can get this guy on here. All right, this guy is probably good to go for us. And then we can take a look. Looks like it's in a good place. It's still a little warm, which is actually a benefit. You don't want it to be too hot that it splatters you, but you do want to, one of the advantages of having it be warm is the aspect where it will actually dry a little bit faster for you being warm. So we're going to go ahead and use one of these silicone sheets here that you can line this. The silicone one is perfect for leather. As you can see, it's pliable, and because of that, like a saran wrap, it's actually quite easy to remove your leather from. Something like this, which is a little bit more firm, will do a good job as well, but you may not have the ability to peel it off quite as quickly. Now, for those of you that are not quite sure that you want to commit all the way to having your own dehydrator, there is such thing as a 19 by 3 inch pan that you line with saran wrap, which is a complete possibility before you decide that you love or don't love fruit leather and the process that goes with it. And you can, again, put that in your oven for about 160 degrees, anywhere from 6 to 8 hours. That is one of the advantages of a dehydrator, is that the process tends to be a little bit more fuel efficient, and also doesn't keep your oven on for 6 to 8 hours in the middle of the summer if it's produce that you're trying to get rid of. All right, so we can go ahead and pour this into our other tray. We can go ahead and pour this into our other tray here. Again, getting to about this point, and that's probably all the more that I'm going to want to add to this particular tray. It's better to spread it out and make sure that you've got bubbles out as well as a nice smooth layer. I'll rinse my spatula. All right. You can always add more. Taking it out of the tray is hard. All right, could use just a bit more. Again, there's nothing that says that you can't commingle your fruit, and especially that's a benefit for fruits that don't quite have the pectin content. So you can add some applesauce to help there. And we'll go ahead and let this dry for, again, 6 to 8 hours, checking as it goes along for dry. It does take quite a bit of time. I do have some fruit leather here that I've already dried, so I'll show you what that looks like. Here, what I did is, this was simply, I used a 9 by 13 inch pan, and I also used just some red raspberries that I had. And so for this, the nice thing about having it on the saran wrap is also the same benefit that you have with a silicone, that it's pretty easy to take and peel off. In terms of storage, you can use the saran wrap, or you can use parchment paper. Essentially just taking it off, peeling it onto your parchment paper, and then you can use it for later use, just like you would with a fruit roll-up. In terms of storage, you can put 2 or 3 of these into a bag, or you can also wrap them up and then you can put them into a jar. The key is to try to keep the air out of it as much as possible. These can probably be shelf stable in your pantry for 2 or 3 weeks, but you can also go much longer if you decide you want to store them into the refrigerator or the freezer. And so they can actually be shelf stable for several months, if they last that long, because they tend to be very good. One thing that we also notice here is that when you have your fruit leather, and this, you can see that the seeds are in it, again, a feature to me, that any amount of sugar that you do decide that you're going to add, you will find that a little bit of sugar goes a very long way. Because you're getting all of the water out during the dehydration process, that sugar does end up tasting a little bit more concentrated. So when it comes to making fruit leathers, there are so many possibilities. This is a day and age where people are really wanting to make their own food and control what's in their ingredients. It's also a great way, again, to make sure that you are using up the produce that you have without letting it go to waste. So give yourself a little bit of practice, a little bit of time, and a little bit of grace, and you'll see that you can probably add fruit leather to your repertoire.